Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. This is J.E. Marie, and welcome back to our Soul Podcast, aka Student of Life. So, today we're going to be talking about your intuition, finding your flow. Now, it's not easy to go with the flow when you've been taught to fight the current your whole life. So, in order to define what we're talking about today, I'm going to use the Oxford definition of intuition. And it states here the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. I'm going to repeat that. It is the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. So, based on that definition, we know that intuition is not logical. It is not something that we have to actively do because it's something that happens immediately. So, this makes me think that it is inherent within us. But even though our intuition is initially inherent within us, for certain reasons, it is a skill that many of us have to build. Why? If it's inherent within us, why do we now have to build a skill of using this thing? Well, through socialization, we are taught to prioritize logical reasoning and communal expectations over those inklings that we may get. Well, and especially because when you get those inklings, you don't have physical proof most of the time. So it makes more sense to prioritize the things that are right in front of you over the things that you may think is just your imagination or could just be a fleeting feeling. So it does make sense logically. However, we have to remember that intuition is not logical. It is immediate without the need for conscious reasoning. Therefore, it is not something, most likely, that we'll have proof of in the moment that we are feeling called to act on something. So, over time of this conditioning of socialization, that inkling that we get that draws us towards something or that draws us away from something gets quieter and it gets harder to hear because we're less trained in following that inkling. And when it comes to this conditioning or the socialization, this can apply to any societal structure. This could be peer to peer relationships in school. This could be the way that our parents expect us to behave from the time we're babies all the way up until we're adults. This could be the workforce. And not only can it be, it is. The socialization is everything having to do with training you to behave in a certain way in a society. So it is all of these things, not can be, it is all of these things. So if you take a look around all of the societal structures around you and what they expect from you, then compare that to how you behave. Now ask yourself, why do you behave a certain way? I'm not saying blame the societal structures in any way. I do want to put that out there. Yet I think it's definitely important to take note of the effects and how you can see how they correlate, how you can correlate the expectations versus how you expect yourself to behave. So now that we've talked about how conditioning can kind of curb our skill of listening to our intuition, let's talk about building the skill. So the skill of hearing and following your intuition can most definitely be rebuilt. It just takes reconditioning through trial and error. So how do we do that? It's important to know that for everyone's intuition, their intuition speaks to them differently. So the first step is to find out, how does your intuition speak to you? This could be a sudden thought or inspiration. It could be a sensation, a physical sensation you get in your body. It could be an emotion that comes out of nowhere. It could sometimes be all three. It could be a combination, or it could be none of these. It could be something that I haven't listed. It's just really important to pay attention to that thing. It's also important to know that whatever comes to you, whether it be a thought, a sensation, or an emotion, usually comes with an inspiration to take action or at least to take note of something. So once you receive that inspiration, take the action that you are feeling, that you feel led to take, whether that is, again, whether you're just being led to take note of something, or whether you're feeling led to do something or to stay away from something. Take note of the feeling and also do what you feel led to do. Now, it is usually after taking the action is when you receive confirmation of whether or not you're hearing your intuition clearly, or whether you followed the intuition clearly. Be aware that results can be immediate or they can come sometime down the line. Very important to maintain that awareness that, again, they can be immediate, like the second after you make a decision, you see why, or they can come sometime down the line. Things like that. It's very important to keep in mind that time isn't necessarily the biggest factor when it comes to following your intuition in terms of the results. Also note that the more you practice hearing and following the leading, the stronger this skill will grow to be, which is why I said it takes a lot of trial and error. Sometimes you think you're being led to do one thing when in reality it was the opposite. You were being warned away from that thing, and vice versa. Sometimes you are overthinking, and then you get a feeling and you think that and you think yourself into, oh, this is my intuition. That most sometimes that definitely isn't the case, and sometimes it definitely is. So again, it takes a lot of trial and error, but it does help to notice the frequency of that sensation. Yet remember that correlation is not causation, so take that into account. But these are the best tips that I can give in terms of learning about your intuition and finding your own flow and learning how to follow that flow. So, more speaking towards my own personal experience, I myself have always had a strong sense of intuition, and I still do. It's just really funny because I had to learn to pay attention to these inklings and these like sinking feelings or these uplifting feelings, whatever the sensation was and whatever it meant. I had to learn to pay attention to them because over time I would get these thoughts and more inspirations to do something, and I would talk about them and someone would tell me that that's a bad idea or whatever the case may be, and I wouldn't do it. And then I would find out down the line if I had, so and so could have happened and that could have been an opportunity. And there's other times where I feel the inkling to stay away from something, but I feel pressured, again, societal pressures, whether that be from my siblings, from my mother, from my family, whoever. I feel pressured to follow through and do this thing, and then I end up regretting it. And so, what this did, it started for me, I began to frame the perception that life is tough for me. Life is just tough. Things don't go the way I want them to. But then it took me a while to realize, hey, these things that are happening, you had signs that this was going to happen and that these things weren't for you or that this other thing was. Yet you decided to pay attention more to what was happening around you in your physical reality more than what your intuition was telling you you needed to do. And so I really had to change my perspective from, okay, it's not like life is just beating me down, because things do happen. I'm not going to say that life isn't hard for anybody, yet the reality was that I was not empowering myself to take my own intuition into account above the opinions and the expectations of other people. So this is something that I definitely had to learn to do. I had to learn to pay attention to these inklings, and the more that I paid attention to them, the more I was able to understand what it meant, other than just something bad's going to happen or I feel good about this, if that makes any sense. But yes, in terms of my own personal experience, this is definitely a side effect from not listening to your own intuition. It can definitely shape your perspective of your life in a way that it's not real. It's definitely not real. because I definitely feel like it's important to let everyone know, anyone who's listening, that your life, again, I know I've said this in a different podcast episode, but your life is in your hands. It is in your hands. And you, deep down within, you are the only one who knows what's best for you. And sometimes we ingest so much information, so many ideas, so many beliefs that they tend to contradict what it is we believe about ourselves or what we initially believed about ourselves. Especially, I'm going to say it again, through conditioning, especially going up through our childhood. So it's so important to recondition yourself in a way that gives you the freedom to explore who you are and what you want. Because in doing that, best believe me, your intuition will speak to you. It will speak. It's just up to you to learn what it's saying and follow the leading. So, thank you for joining me today on this Soul Podcast episode of Intuition, Finding Your Flow. Again, my name is J. Eve Marie, and I wish you all the best on your SOL journey.